What's going on, guys? Welcome back to United View. How is everybody doing? Hope you're having a good Friday. As always, I'm back. A solo press conference reaction. I haven't done one of these in a while by myself. It's been a moment, hasn't it? It has been a brief moment since I've done a solo version of these press conference reactions, so it should be a lot of fun. We've got a lot to get into. It was a really good press conference, actually. So there's plenty of big quotes to get into. There's plenty of interesting tidbits ahead of the Manchester derby on Sunday that we can speak about. So I'm very excited to get into all of these quotes. Ralph Rangnick, of course, spoke to the assembled press ahead of Sunday's Manchester derby at the Etihad Stadium. Before I do get started, though, obviously about, 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes ago, before I even came on live here, I've like everyone else, have just seen the really sad news about Shane Warne. Now, obviously, if you're not familiar, you're not a cricket fan or whatever, Shane Warne for me is one of, if not the greatest spin bowler ever, period, to play the game. And it's been announced that he's suddenly passed away at the age of 52, which is just, it's scary. It's so scary. It really is no age. And, I'm not even the biggest cricket fan in the world. My passion's football and wrestling and all that kind of stuff. But I remember the first time I myself watched a game of cricket was an Ashes test. I think it was in 2005 during that, when they were over in the UK or over in England. And he was part of all of that. And that wasn't even really in his prime. It wasn't even in his pomp. And he was just, even then, sensational. Absolute sensational. Great personality. The thing he could do with a cricket ball in terms of spin bowler, spinning it with his pinky was just incredible. Absolutely incredible. So it's just desperately, desperately sad news for sport, for cricket, for life, So it's a huge lot, not only to cricket, but also to sport in general, as I mentioned. So rest in peace, Shane Warne. Horrible news to hear today, really. So rest in peace, and like everyone, pass on my thoughts to his family in this very, very difficult time. Let me know where you're watching from today, guys. Obviously, you can put your thoughts when it comes to Shane Warne in the live chat as well. James is in the chat, says, crazy about Shane. Yep, absolutely. David Lee says, RIP. Incredibly sad, as Mersham says, RIP Warner. Yeah. Horrible news. And like I said, even if you're not, I don't even think if you're the biggest cricket fan in the world, you'd probably know who Shane Warne is, because he's just such a character and just the greatest, absolutely the greatest at what he did. But let's talk about the press conference. That's why we're here today, to talk about the press conference ahead of the Manchester derby on Sunday. Really, do you know what? I've done a few of these this year, obviously, haven't I? This season. I've done a few of these press conference reactions, and sometimes they are just, completely boring, or sometimes they are just full of questions which you go, why have you asked that question? That's a terrible question. Bland questions get bland responses, all that kind of stuff. But today's one, and it's been a bit of a theme recently, I suppose, just a real good press conference full of really great questions. I think it had to do with, this was the first press conference in about 2 years that the entire press was assembled in person. So gone are these Zoom calls or these Skype calls or however they did it, FaceTime, carrier pigeon. I don't know how they used to do it. Nevertheless, those days seemingly are gone. So for the first time in 2 years, the press was assembled at Carrington. Ralph Rangnick had the press in front of him asking questions. The problem is when they're asking questions that I have no idea who was asking those questions unless you're familiar with their voices. So it's difficult to know who was asking the questions. But you had a much quicker and more energetic press conference, because the journalists are trying to get their questions in, they've got responses, and they know when to jump on something quickly. In those sort of Zoom press conferences, you put your virtual hand up, you ask your question, and then they move on. In this one, it's kind of like they'll ask a question, and then if they hear something or they sort of pick up on something, they'll go in on it, and the press conference can go in a completely different direction, which is great, which I really enjoyed that. I enjoy spontaneity. I enjoy them asking proper probing questions and really having good conversations about important matters at Manchester United. So it was a really good press conference. Really did enjoy it. So we'll start off with the first question to Ralph Rangnick, and it was asked, since you've came in, you've made 160 chances, more than any other side in the Premier League since Ralph Rangnick was appointed. This was the big stat on social media after the Watford game, wasn't it? Since Ralph Rangnick was appointed as the interim Manchester United manager, they have made 160 chances, which is more than anyone else in the Premier League. So because of this, and because the side are, improving somewhat, do you think you have a good chance of being the permanent manager next season? Ralph Rangnick said, quote, I have no idea idea. I haven't made any thoughts about it or any thoughts about that because my focus is on Sunday and then on Tottenham and then Atletico. There is no time for me to think about that. Now, this was then followed up with, during your unveiling, though, you said you would be open to it, and Ralph cut him off. This is what's great about the in-person press conferences. Ralph cut him off. And he said, no, I know what I said. I said with a twinkle in my eye that maybe at one stage at the end of the season, I would recommend myself as a consultant. That's what I said. And then the guy said back, well, would you still say that? Would you still recommend that? He went, I don't know. It's not the end of the season yet. There are plenty of games to play, and I'm preparing for Sunday. So again, that kind of dynamic we have not seen in a really long time. So I enjoyed that immensely. I did. As far as him being, does he think he has a good chance of it? Like he sort of said, I don't know. And what do you expect of him to say? You expect him to come out and go, yeah, I think so. And to be fair, managers have actually done that in the past. When they've gone, yeah, like they're interim, they go, yeah, I think I've got a good chance. And they always look like idiots. So everyone that does that, it never ends well. And what's he supposed to say? No, because, you could have people criticize him saying, why are you thinking about getting the job permanently? Focus on the games. We're not even playing, we're not getting the results we want to get at the moment. We've dropped so many points because of draws and not scoring goals and all that kind of stuff. And that's not on Rangnick. That is not on Ralph Rangnick. He's set the team up to create all of these chances and has done very well in doing that. But, I don't suspect that he was going to come out and say, oh, yeah, I've got a great chance. And I enjoyed him saying, well, but when you got unveiled, you said this. He went, no, this is what I said. I said this. And they went, yeah. And he went, do you still think that? And as he responded, I don't know. It's not the end of the season. So I haven't even thought about that. And that was a recurring theme, it must be said, through this press conference today, whereby it was kind of a situation of they were asking him a lot about the managerial situation, which you would expect because that's been the stories, that's been the reports recently of a bit about the managerial situation. And what was also, I suppose, quite surprising is that he sort of revealed throughout the press conference that actually, you know what, I'm not really involved at the moment. I might be eventually, but I haven't had any discussions, and I'll offer my opinion if I'm asked, but I haven't been asked yet. And that in itself is pretty significant, isn't it? So I thought he answered that well. He's not the favourite. He's not. And we've spoken about this quite in depth over the course of the last few days in the shows that I did with either DJ or Faz and Cam. Is Ralph Rangnick the favourite to become the next permanent Manchester United manager? No, he's not. We know who the favourites are. The favourites are Pochettino, Ten Hag. If you believe what you read, Luis Enrique's involved in that. But as I've said in a couple of these shows, if you can't get them for whatever reason, Poch decides to go to Real Madrid, Ten Hag has reservations on the structure, or just the situation arises that, we can't get this long-term target right now, I'm really not opposed to giving it to Rangnick for another year or working something out. But, as I've said several times, and this isn't, you're sitting on the fence, Owen, you're sitting on the fence. There is so much that can change between now and the end of the season. I sound like a broken record, I know, but it's true. And I agree with what some people are saying of, well, Rangnick really hasn't been tested yet. The biggest test he's had was the Atletico game. And even that, he played a bit of a curveball when he put Victor Lindelof at right back. So we'll know. We'll know at the end of March. If he goes through this month and he wins all of these games, people are going to be going, wow, that's something that people didn't expect to happen. That's something that nobody saw coming. And maybe that does change some people's opinions. But we're talking about hypotheticals at this point. So I think come the end of March, maybe those questions will intensify or maybe they'll drop off completely. If they drop off completely, it's because what happens is what people expect to happen. And that's just to not win many games in March. So, I think the thing is, after doing enough of these press conferences, when it comes to Ralph Rangnick, he is as transparent as a window. He just says it how it is. He does not make stuff up. He does not lie. Things might get misinterpreted, or he will tell what he perceives to be the truth, and actually in reality he's got bad information. In those cases of, say, like Lingard or Martial, those kind of misunderstandings, shall we say. But he's very transparent. So when he's saying, I don't know, legitimately he goes, I don't know. I really don't know. So I think that's the situation there. The next question, or as David Lee says, by the way, guys, let's get your comments up on the screen. Smash a like on the like button, please. Be sure to subscribe, bottom right-hand corner. Of course, big weekend of sports, big weekend for Manchester United coming up. So if you subscribe now on that road to 100k, you won't miss a single thing. You'll miss nothing. And you'll be part of those people. You can say, look, guys, I was there in before 100k. I celebrated that milestone. We're all part of it. We're all part of this journey together. So next question was about playing Pep Guardiola in the Manchester derby on Sunday. It was they said it was the first meeting with Pep. I can't believe that would be ever. I don't think that's ever. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I haven't checked, and I probably should have before I came on live here. But is it the first time Ralf Rangnick and Pep Guardiola have ever had a match against each other? I just can't believe that to be true, considering that there must have been some crossover, right, with Pep at Bayern and Rangnick at Leipzig. There must have been. I mean, I might be wrong there. I mean, when did he... Maybe there wasn't. I mean, because I think Ralf Hasenhüttl was the first Leipzig coach that coached in the Bundesliga because they finished second. I think by that point he'd handed over the reins. Maybe there wasn't. I don't know. If not, we'll see. We'll see. We can. Someone let me know in the live chat. That's your challenge. Is to do a Google search. But certainly it's the first time he's played Pep Guardiola's Manchester City, and it's his first Manchester derby. That we can confirm. So the question was, what are you expecting? And this is what he had to say, quote, we know that we're playing one of, if not the best team in the world. They have developed well since Pep arrived. The same happened at Bayern Munich and at Barcelona. He is one of the best. We have created a lot of chances in the last 10 or 11 games. We scored 4 goals at Leeds, and we should have scored 1, 2 or 3 goals against Watford. But I would have been more worried if we had not been creating chances. We are also compact when the other team is in possession of the ball. So... I mean, those questions when you say, oh, what do you expect from Manchester City or Pep Guardiola, you know what to expect. They're going to dominate the ball. They're going to be playing in very, very fluid positions. They've got a false nine that will drop into the midfield, and one of their wingers, various wingers or various, advanced players will jump into that false nine position. They'll rotate positions. We know their fullbacks are going to be high up. We know that Ederson is going to be part of this incredibly high line. He's almost playing as a centre-back, a sweeper. We know how Man City are going to play. It doesn't make it any less easy. I mean, it's certainly a debating topic. If they're the best team in the world, they're in the conversation. They absolutely are. I mean, as much as Manchester United fans will hate to admit it, and it's part of that sort of conversation you don't want to admit in the back of your head, eventually, they haven't yet, but eventually they will win the Champions League. They got to the final against Chelsea last year. And we can love it that they haven't won a Champions League, but they will eventually, in the same way that for years when Chelsea got all of their money, it was like, yeah, but they won't win the Champions League. And it's like, well, but they will eventually. And are they one of the best teams in the world? They're in the conversation. Certainly they are, especially when you look at other teams declining as well. Real Madrid aren't what they were. Barcelona certainly aren't. Juventus aren't. People like Man City and Liverpool are in that conversation at the moment. The English teams are back to dominating in terms of being the strongest sides in Europe. So I think that's probably a fair comparison. When he talks about, the chances we've created over the course of the last 10 or 11 games, it's true. My concern going into Sunday is that we can't afford to be so wasteful and sloppy with chances because... Yes, against people like Watford and against like Burnley and against Middlesbrough, we created a ton of chances. I would be flabbergasted if we created that many. Well, we're just not. We're not going to make that many chances against Manchester City because we're just not going to have that much of the ball to create those chances. So we have to be clinical on a level that we've been nowhere near when we've had a lot of chances recently. That's my concern. I think it's fair. I think it's very fair that... when he says, I'd be worried if we weren't creating chances, that is a positive way to look at it, certainly. And you can say that. I think Cam mentioned it during yesterday's stream that our XG is really, since Rangnick has arrived, it's been really, really high. It's always an XG of 2. And I know, obviously, people go, oh, XG, what does it really mean? What does it really prove? Eventually, it plays out. So... one would hope, and that's what it is at this moment, isn't it? It's hope, because we have to hope for a lot of things to go right for us for the remainder of this season when it comes to other side dropping points and when it comes to us actually picking up the performance levels and scoring goals. We have to hope that we're way more clinical this weekend. And I do think it's fair when it goes, well, I'd be concerned if we weren't making chances. We were at that point. we were in his early stages in that 4-2-2, we weren't making a lot of chances, and that was concern. And that was concern. At least the positive is that we are making chances. Whether or not that leads to goals, that's the concern. That's the concern. Big news when it comes to Edinson Cavani as well. So Edinson Cavani was mentioned in the press conference. Ralph was asked, will Edinson Cavani be available for the Manchester derby at the weekend? And this is what Rangnick had to say, quote, "It looks good. He has been in training. He could be part of the group on Sunday. We will have to see what happens tomorrow or Sunday, but as things stand, he should be part of the group." So Cavani's back, which is a positive, obviously, because we're so limited when it comes to striking options. And there was a really good question asked about the striking options later on in the press conference. The Cavani thing is just weird. I mean, it is just weird, isn't it? Because this was a guy that in the last press conference that we did before the Watford game, or whenever it was, he was asked, what's going on with Cavani? And Ralph was like, no, he doesn't feel like he can train. If he doesn't feel like he can train, he can't play. And now suddenly he's fine. Now he is ready. He can train. He's had a recovery. His groin is apparently no longer giving him issues where he can sprint. So, but this is Cavani. This is Cavani to the end of the season. This is what I've said. He is going to be a sub player, an impact sub player, and I guess it's just trying somehow to manage him as best as possible to know that he would always be available from the bench. Cavani's not, and this is the frustrating thing. We've got March. The season ends in what? April, May, and you know for a fact between now and May, Cavani will be out of action because of an injury minimum twice. A minimum. Maybe even more than that. And it might be the same injury. It might be a groin thing. It might be a tendon thing. It might be an ankle thing. It might be a calf thing, a hamstring thing. We don't know, but he will be out. He will have more injuries between now and the end of the season. But because we're so limited when it comes to what we've got, and certainly in terms of striking options, we're forced to rely on him. Because as I mentioned, against Watford, I truly believe if we had Edinson Cavani on the bench, I think Ralph might have gone like for like and just gone, you know what, Cristiano, I just don't think it's your day. Today you hit the post and you are struggling a little bit for form at the moment. Just take him off. But what choice has he got? He doesn't have much of a choice. So positive is that Cavani's available. We know he's leaving at the end of the season. We just have to hope that he's not injured as much towards the end of the season. But he's been injured a lot, really injured a lot, and that's a problem. Philip says, get the likes up, guys. Yes, got nearly 250 people watching, so be sure to smash a like on the like button. Let's get it up to 100 likes if we can. But Edinson Cavani is back for the weekend. Do I think he'll start? No, I don't. And I don't think he probably should, to be honest. I'm not sure what formation Ralph will play because he's sort of gone through a few recently, hasn't he? He's gone back to the 4-2-3-1. I like the 4-3-3. I think we look way more attacking and we create a lot more at the 4-3-3. The issue is, are you going to play that kind of style and system against Manchester City? Is he even going to play that midfield three that he likes to play of Fernandes, Pogba, McTominay? That might be way too open to play at the Etihad. So we might see the return of McFred. We might see a 4-2-3-1. I don't know. Either way, Cavani should be on the bench because we need options. We need options from the bench. And Cavani, given his recent injury record, him playing a 90-minute game, it's just a risk. It's just a risk. It's not even that really calculated, really, is it? So he should start on the bench, and I think he will. I think he'll start on the bench because I think Ralph will. He's very, in all of the games we've had so far, he's very much, if a mistake happens, he learns from it. He doesn't make the same mistake twice. So he'll look at Watford last weekend and say, we could have used to have a striker off the bench. Okay, we've got one this time, so we'll leave it. We'll make sure he's on the bench. Next question was about the structure of Manchester United, and this was actually these were good questions because these were questions that, again, you don't really get asked that much in these press conferences. So the next question was, do you think as a club you are in the position to get somewhere near to Manchester City? They have seemingly the right structure. a foundation, a chief executive, technical director, manager. That all seems fluid. At Man United, in the past, certainly, it's not seemed like that. Will you have a wider role in the future? And do Manchester United have what it needs to get close to Manchester City? And he sort of skirted this a little bit. He sort of said, I haven't really thought about that at the moment. Again, his full focus is on the side. He mentioned that he doesn't really know the structure at Manchester City. I mean, no, but I think broad strokes, everyone kind of knows that structure. It's very transparent, so we kind of know that structure. So I'm not sure he's being particularly truthful there. He mentions that he knows most of the people here, but his focus was and is still developing the current team. What was quite interesting in his response to this answer was, though, where he said that the biggest point of difference, I suppose, when it comes to Manchester United and Manchester City and Liverpool is that they've got continuity with their coaches. And their coaches have a clear identity of how they want to play, and that basically lends itself and spreads throughout the club. So he said, quote, Pep has a clear idea of how he wants to play. This idea is the headline for everything that happens at the club. Recruitment, players they sign, or who they sell. This is the secret of their success and their guideline for everything they do. That is for the players and other staff all of the top clubs in Europe have in common, and this is something that needs to be improved and developed at Manchester United in the next 2 years. And I think that's a really interesting statement by Ralf Rangnick, because his point is that for Manchester United to succeed in the future, there needs to be continuity when it comes to managers. We can't keep chopping and changing, which is somewhat fair, but if you've not got the right guy on the job, then you have to make a change ultimately. But I think his more important point there is that if you have your manager, say it is Ten Hag, every single person in the club needs to buy into Ten Hag's version or vision of football. If you're saying, okay, Ten Hag plays this style of football, so the players we're recruiting fit into his style, and everyone thinks in the same vision as him. That comes from the top, that comes from the coach, and it sort of bleeds out through the rest of the structure. Whether that is staff, whether that is the academy, whether that is recruitment, whether that is selling people, whether that is whatever it may be, it all stems from the vision of the coach. It stems from the vision of the manager, and everyone needs to be on board with that vision. And maybe that's part of the problem of Manchester United in recent years. We have a club that's kind of Frankenstein together by 5 or 6 different managers at this point. You've got people in the recruitment department that were brought in under Louis van Gaal or David Moyes. You've got people in the physio department that were brought in by Jose Mourinho and all this kind of stuff. You still got people that were there obviously with Oli, and because of that, you have this club that's got different perspectives and different philosophies and different styles on football going all the way through, and it kind of leads to chaos. And I think it was a really important point that Rangnick mentions there of, we can talk about structure, but it needs to come from the manager, and then everything kind of follows suit. There needs to be continuity. And let's face it, there hasn't been continuity at Manchester United for a decade. Now, you can get into reasons why there hasn't been continuity. You can get into reasons why we've got a club that's been, Frankenstein together, like I say, when it comes to staff and backroom staff and all that kind of stuff. And maybe that does come from poor leadership at the top of the club when it comes to the Glazers and it comes to Ed Woodward, the former CEO. But the next managerial appointment is so key because everyone has to buy into that philosophy. Everyone has to buy into that is how Manchester United are going to play football and operate as a club going forward. And that's why it's so key. Obviously, it's so key. So I think that was a really interesting comment there by Ralf Rangnick. Fat Thor says, do you think the Southampton manager could be another consideration, as it would be a continuation of Ralph's philosophy? I know there was some discussion about that, wasn't there? I think it was brought up on BT Sport by, I think it was Paul Scholes and Glenn Hoddle spoke about it, because obviously when they had the game and the relationship that Ralf Rangnick and Ralph Hasenhüttl will have, my concern with Ralph Hasenhüttl would be maybe I know he's at Leipzig, which was a big club, and he did do good stuff there. And the first season he had in the Bundesliga with Ralf Rangnick as his sporting director was nothing but miraculous, frankly. I know they got a lot of money there a while back, but first season in the Bundesliga to be second is impressive. But maybe the Southampton to Manchester United would be too much of a step up. I don't know. And honestly, I don't know anymore. It's just, I don't think he is in the consideration of the Ten Hags and Pochettinos, obviously. But, you hear these people that say, why not Ralph Hasenhüttl? Why not Graham Potter? All that kind of stuff. But I don't know. I don't know anymore. I'm almost tired already talking about new managers. And we haven't even got to the end of the season yet. The next question was, with the way that Ralf Rangnick is trying to get the team to play at the moment, it's obviously creating so many chances, playing more attacking. Does he think, or does he hope that the new coaches, whoever that is, does he expect him to build on the things that he's put in place, or adhere to the style of football that he's playing at the club, or who he wants to play at the club? Basically, is the new manager who comes in, are they going to pick up what Ralf Rangnick's done and continue it and say, okay, these philosophies were implemented by Ralf Rangnick, we're going to adhere to them? Or is the new manager going to come in and just, go, no, rip it apart, this is my version of football? What's going to happen? And Ralf Rangnick said, again, as he would, I don't know. I don't know. It depends on the decision for the manager next season. Every head coach has his own idea of football. As he mentioned before, it's about consistency, continuity, and quality. He said, quote, "For me, Jurgen and Pep are two of the best coaches in Europe. They have a clear idea of football and having a vision." And I think it's an interesting point that is raised there by the journalist of, surely you would be looking at, if you were Manchester United, if you were Richard Arnold, John Murtough, all of those guys, you would be looking at something that had the smoothest transition, right? You'd be looking at coaches that are saying, okay, whoever comes in and replaces Ralf isn't obviously going to be exactly the same as him, has the exact same principles, the exact same mindset. If you could find someone like that, it would make the transition way, way smoother, obviously, but everyone has different viewpoints. Everyone has different philosophies. But it does make sense when it comes to continuity, when it comes to consistency, is to find someone that has similar or at least compatible viewpoints to Ralf Rangnick. Now, does Erik ten Hag or Mauricio Pochettino have, those kind of similar ideas? I mean, only really Ralf Rangnick would know, and that's why he is so important to that process. Frankly, and we'll speak about this later on when he was asked, that's why he's important, and that's why he should be involved in those discussions, because he will know. He will know if he's involved in either the selection process, the interviewing process, whatever. He will know who has the best, whose philosophy, whose style of play is most similar to him and is most similar to what he's trying to do right now and can fit these players the best. That's our ace in the hole. Ralf Rangnick's our ace in the hole. When it comes to recruiting the new manager, he knows the players better than any director of football, any chief executive does, because he works with them every single day. He's managed them for however many months. By the end of the season, it'll be several months. He is our ace in the hole. We have to use him appropriately. Whether or not he's involved in those conversations, I don't know. And I don't think he knows at the moment either, which is certainly a concern too. David Lee says, I wonder if City will train before the match. Oh, you've just brought up some bad memories, David. I remember that now. I you know what? I had completely forgotten about Kevin De Bruyne saying that. That it was like, 10 minutes before, rip up the game plan. We don't need to do it. We don't need them. I've forgotten about that. Yeah. I don't have, to be honest, and I don't have as much dread going into Sunday's game as I did earlier on in the season. And I don't know why. I don't know if that's just because I'm just defeated at this point. I don't know if it's because, for not scoring the goals, I have seen positive things over the course of the last 10 weeks or so where Ralf Rangnick's been at the club. But I'm not feeling as, walking into that game against Man City, I had to do the match view here on the channel. Walking into that game, you just knew. This is not going to be pretty. We're going to get battered. Yes, it was 2-0. It could have been way, way more. City just took the piss, basically. I mean, they did. It was just, they could have been 5, 6, 7. They just toyed around with us like we were, like they were a big cat. We were just a ball of string and they were just going like that. That's what it was. That's what that was, that game. And if they wanted to turn it on at any point, they could have. So I don't feel like that. I mean, I could be wrong. We could be 3-0 down in the opening 30 minutes. And that's the interesting thing about Ralf Rangnick. Again, we haven't really seen him in this environment at Manchester United. The biggest game that we've seen him involved in so far was the Atletico game. And first off, we got battered. We got absolutely battered. We were terrible. One of the worst performances all season. And even he couldn't believe it. He could not believe it. And I suppose maybe that would be a concern too for him. And I don't want to get too much into the preview because Flex is doing that later on this evening. But that would be a concern that when the pressure's been on this season, crumbled doesn't even cover it. It doesn't even cover it. We looked so terrified and petrified by the atmosphere at the Wanda Metropolitano just a couple of weeks ago. And we crumbled in that first 15 minutes. So I know the Etihad, the empty ad, whatever you want to call it, and the atmosphere won't be great, but it's still a Manchester derby, and it's still, it still will have an atmosphere, and you've got to manage that, and you've got to be able to cope with that kind of pressure, and that would certainly be a concern of mine, absolutely. Ian says, I have heard Cavani is back from holiday. He's back with the group. He has been training. He's been back with the group. He is training. The next question was asked about Cristiano Ronaldo, because it wouldn't be a press conference without him. It wouldn't be a press conference without Cristiano Ronaldo, saying that Ronaldo's got 1 goal in 10. After Watford, Ralph Rangnick said that he didn't have really any other options there. Is it a failure of planning by Manchester United to be so reliant on a once great player at 37 whose best games are clearly behind him? Now, that journalist, when he was saying it, he's not technically wrong, is he? But I was like, oh, that is, whew. And Ralph Rangnick actually didn't really talk too much about the Ronaldo situation. He just said, quote, there are a few things that have happened in the last few months that could have not been foreseen. Obviously, he's referring to the Mason Greenwood situation there, which is true. He says, Marcus has got everything for a modern striker, and I will put all of my energy into helping take the same pathway as everyone in the last few months. So he said, essentially, we're a bit light because of certain situations, which is fair, which is true. He didn't really comment on Ronaldo's form, didn't really comment on 1 goal in 10 games, but sort of said, yeah, we're light, obviously, but because of we're light, I think Marcus Rashford can do that job. I don't see why it can't happen with Marcus Rashford. He's like Rashford in another player. I will insist and get behind him to improve. I don't see why that can't happen with Rashford. He has everything you need for a modern striker. He talked about, his pace, his presence, his strength, and he's going to put all of his energy into that to take the same pathway that other players have. Now, that is a debate, to say the least. Rashford's form this season has just been a million miles off it. It's one thing if Rashford was playing really well on the left-hand side or the right-hand side and was scoring goals, getting assists, that you would say, you know what, put him up front. He's in great form. He's scoring goals. He's making things happen. But he's not. He just isn't. And even in games that he is getting assists, right? A game he got an assist against, was it Brighton? Whoever it was. When he got that assist, he was still poor. He was still really poor in that game. And that's the problem with Marcus Rashford at the moment. And I don't think anyone really has a good answer to what the situation is with Marcus Rashford at the moment, but his form's just really off it, to the detriment of the side. And he looks at points a bit of a defeated figure, and he looks like it looks like he doesn't know. And I think that would be the biggest conversation. If you asked him, how do you think you're playing? How do you think your form is? He'd probably say, I'm not playing well. Why? I don't know. I'm training well. That's what Rangnick always says. He's training well and physically looks fine. He doesn't have any injuries. He seems to have recovered from all of his injuries, whether it was his shoulder, his ankle, whatever it may be. All of that he's recovered from, and he's playing below the standard that we expect for him. Can that be resolved by him going up front? I don't think so. I think part of the biggest problem that people will say about Marcus Rashford is the football intelligence side of things, the composure, his ability to strike a ball. He just puts his foot through it all the time, as opposed to puts it, a bit more of a finesse shot into the bottom corner. It's crazy because I was talking about this in one of the match reaction streams that we did. When he was younger, for me, he had more composure. I recall him playing, ironically, in the Manchester derby at the Etihad, one-on-one with the goalkeeper. Van Gaal era puts it through, I think it was Joe Hart's legs. And when he was younger, you fancied him on one-on-ones. You did. Now, not so much. If Marcus Rashford's one-on-one with the goalkeeper, I'm not sure I'd fancy him as much. Whereas when he was younger, he did. And that is quite surprising. Now, he might have to be a makeshift striker to the end of the season. As we spoke about earlier, we know Edinson Cavani, between now and the end of the season, he's going to be out at least once. If he was out just once for injury between now and the end of the season, I'd say, what a recovery in terms of his fitness. We know between now and the end of the season, he's going to be out at least 2 or 3 times. That's just going to happen. And we know the situation that is that we're light up front. And we can't. Even if Ronaldo was really on form and scoring goals, we still can't rely on him because you need to have options. We don't have options there. And if Ronaldo's not playing well and Rashford's on the bench, I would say, do it. Put Rashford up front because you need to change things. You need to try different things. And maybe if Rashford does get a goal, maybe that will change things completely for him. And we can't rely on Ronaldo so much. I mean, also, why not look to the youth team, right, as well? That's why they're there, to try and push through to the first team. I know it's a big jump, but these are difficult and different situations. How did Marcus Rashford get his start in the Manchester United side? Because Anthony Martial was injured in the warm-up against Midtjylland in the Europa League. So why can't we go to a player in the youth side? So Rashford being a striker, I'm not sure about that one. I'm not sure about that one. Be sure to smash a like on the like button, guys. We've got over 300 people watching, only 106 likes. Can you hear that? Can you hear that? That's Josh screaming somewhere. Although he's just watched the Batman film last night. I haven't. This is a spoiler-free zone. We're not talking about Batman spoilers here, okay? Spoiler-free zone. I was even watching a video this morning. This is how obsessed I am. I was watching a video this morning about ciphers in the Batman film from the Riddler, or not even in the film, in the build-up to the film, like the sort of press and all this kind of stuff. They've done this really good campaign where they've been slowly releasing like these codes and ciphers, and if you've been decoding them, you can go to a website and then you download a zip file and it plays this little clip from the film, and it's just very good. It's very good. But then it got to a point where it was spoilerific, and I was like, "Whoa, I'm not gonna touch that one. I'm not looking for Batman spoilers today." Okay, that's not happening. Next question was about the search for a new permanent manager. And he was asked, now the process is now underway for a new manager. How involved will Ralph be in the process to select that new coach? And this is kind of the eye-opening situation, because the assumption wasn't it, that Ralph Rangnick would be heavily involved. He would be involved in this process. He would be involved in searching for a new manager, or he would give his recommendation of who to speak to, or as I spoke about earlier, this guy fits my philosophy, this guy fits how we're playing, we've got the squad to play with this guy would be the right person. And he has said, quote, "We have had 1 or 2 meetings with the head of scouting," just talking about recruitment when it comes to players, not coaches. And he said, "I will not speak too much in detail about that, but we have not spoken about the new manager too much." So him saying, look, I haven't spoken about it. Haven't been involved. Haven't been involved in the discussion for new managers. Now, he does say a bit later on that he might be. He goes, "I might be, I just haven't yet." That is somewhat of a concern for me, because at the same time, you've got Richard Arnold and John Murtough coming out going, "We've got a short list of people we want to talk to, and we're going to have a thorough search, and that thorough search is underway." And then you've also got Rangnick going, "Well, I haven't spoken to anyone." So once again, you're hearing 2 different kind of narratives there. And they're both probably true. I think that Richard Arnold and John Murtough probably have had discussions or have a short list of people they want. My only hope, and maybe this is me being naive, but my hope is that it's being whittled down more. And then they'll say to Ralph, "Look, it's 2 people. Say Ten Hag or Poch. What do you think? What do you think we should do?" Because I suppose it's a case of, if we're talking about people that aren't available or won't be available, why even bring that to Ralph? And unless you're saying that his opinion should be steering you in a direction to pursue someone with, I suppose. So we'll talk about that in a second. The next question was saying, obviously, appreciate the priority is the games ahead, but being heavily involved in strategic, easy for me to say, planning with other clubs in the past, how difficult is it to plan for the summer ahead without even a manager in place? How can a club identify the right profile of player when they don't even know who the new manager is? And Ralph conceded. He said, "Look, I get your point. But," quotes, "we haven't spoken about that. I am the wrong person to address the question. I'm here to focus on the team. We can speak about it, but we have not had the time or opportunity yet." So again, he's not ruling out that they will speak about it in the future, but he's also saying, "Yeah, but we haven't spoken about it yet, and I hope we will." But this is what I was saying in January too. I mentioned this when we did all of these transfer streams, and we were talking about, United interested in this person, or what's the situation, or about this person's contract. Is Dean Henderson going to be sold? Is Jesse Lingard going to be sold? And they were asking Ralph these questions, and every single time he said, "I don't know. I don't know because I'm not involved." I'm not involved in that. And it got to the point, and I know they're not in the place, the journalists, to ask questions to John Murtough or Darren Fletcher or Richard Arnold or any people like that. But they're really the ones to ask the questions to, because they're the ones involved. Ask John Murtough. because that's what John Murtough's job is. John Murtough is the football director. His job at the moment, and he said it in his press release earlier this week, in those quotes, he's the one that's searching for the manager. He's going to be the one that's interviewing and identifying the manager. So surely he's the person to ask about those kind of decisions. If it's difficult to identify and recruit players if you don't have a manager in place, Ralph will have his opinion, I'm sure. He will absolutely have his opinion on if that's difficult or if that's problematic for the club. It is. Obviously, it's chaos that we don't need at the club. But to ask Ralph, as he said, he'll give you the honest answer. I haven't spoken about it. I'm the wrong person to ask that question to because I'm not involved. You know, that's like, I don't know, building a house and then talking to someone that isn't the builder and going, how'd you build that house? He goes, well, I don't know. I didn't build it. I'm not involved in that process. You know, that wasn't me. So the concern obviously coming out of it would be like, should he not be involved in those conversations given his proximity to the players, given his experience in recruiting managers and recruiting players in the past? Should he not be involved? But again, he's not ruling it out. He's just saying we haven't had time to do it at the moment. Because we haven't had time to do it and have that conversation doesn't mean it won't happen in the future. Next question was, this was quite an interesting one too. In your opinion, should this never happen again at a club like Manchester United, a vacuum like this? It wouldn't happen at City or Liverpool because they are organised. Now, would it happen at City or Liverpool? Well, it hasn't, I guess, in recent times. And notice he didn't put Chelsea in there because it has happened in recent times. So I think the idea that it never happens at a big club is somewhat far-fetched because it does. It shouldn't, and it does show lack of planning and lack of foresight, obviously. But, I mean, let's not pretend that it hasn't happened in the past. But again, I suppose we're in a situation where it's the second time it's happened to Manchester United in, 4 years? That's a problem. Absolutely, that's a problem. But Rangnick said, I don't know. He said, quote, I'm here until the end of the season and it's important to develop the players and develop the team. I'm always there and will tell people my opinion, but as of yet, it has not happened. But that could change in the coming weeks or months. So once again, reaffirming that point of, if someone asks me my opinion about who the new manager should be, if someone asks you my opinion on which players we should go for, if someone asks my opinion on anything, I'll give it. And as a consultant going forward, that will be my job. But nobody's asked me my opinion right now. Now, I know that will be alarming to some, and it is. It is somewhat alarming. You go, because the answer you want to hear him say is, I've been involved in those discussions. I've given my opinions. I've given my recommendations, X, Y, Z. But on the flip side, like he keeps stressing, I'm the interim manager right now. I'm not a consultant at the moment. I'm an interim manager. Therefore, as the interim manager, my job as of today is to prepare the players, focus on games, win points. My job as a consultant can come later on. And I do think it's fair to look at it from that perspective. But as a fan, as an outsider looking in, it is concerning when you're like, this is a guy that's got not just experience as a coach, but certainly as significant experience as a sporting director, as a director of football. And his opinion as of right now hasn't really been, according to him, been asked for. But if it is, he'll give it. And like everyone, I think everyone's just like, we don't really know what that consultancy looks like, I suppose. EDT says, Fergie should always be consulted. Not saying he should have veto power / final say, but it doesn't hurt to talk to him. We all forget he wanted Pep to replace him when he originally planned on retiring in 2014. I mean, a lot of people with the Fergie opinion thing when it comes to David Moyes, they're kind of scarred by that one, I suppose. I remember, it was in that Jose Mourinho Spurs Amazon documentary, wasn't it? It was like, Alex Ferguson gave me one bit of advice when I was Manchester United manager, and that was sign Dele Alli. No, I'm glad he didn't. I'm glad he ignored that advice as well. So, but absolutely should be consulted. And I'm sure it's the same with Sir Alex, to be honest. Like, I'm sure if he was asked, or if he is asked, he gives his opinion. But he's a director on the board. We don't know really how much influence he has. Certainly not the same as the director of football. Certainly not the same as, obviously, the chief executive, etc. So we don't really know his influence. And it's the same with Ralph Rangnick. We don't really know his role at the end of the season. We know it's a consultant, but we don't know. We don't. Final question was about, obviously, playing Pep at the weekend, saying you've watched Pep teams over the course of the last 10, 15 years. In theory, putting it into practice, how challenging will that be? Rangnick said, quote, in the end, it is about controlling the game, not letting them play without pressure, because this is what they want, overloading spaces. The Manchester City goalkeeper plays as a centre-back and the full-back as a number 6 midfielder. For us, it's about finding moments where we can take the ball away from them and make the best out of those transitional moments. So again, we know what we're going to get. We know what we're going to get when we play Manchester City on Sunday. We know their style of play. We know how they're going to set up. I think the key almost is that we also know what's worked for us. One of the, I guess, most redeeming things about Solskjaer's tenure at Manchester United is that his record against Manchester City, particularly at the Etihad, was very, very good. And he showed how to play against them. You have to play on the counter-attack. You have to move the ball quickly. You have to win the ball back. And then it's got to be a couple of passes. Bang, bang, bang. And then you get your opportunity. That's it. You've got to be moving the ball quickly and you've got to win the ball quickly. Whether or not Rangnick will adopt that, we'll have to wait and see. That's the game plan to beat Man City, and then you have to ride your luck and get your moments of not conceding goals too. Whether or not we'll get that at the weekend, who knows, right? Who knows whether we'll get it. But what's on tap for the remainder of the day? So as I mentioned, guys, there is going to be a preview coming later on this evening. Got something really special lined up, Flex does. So Flex will be with you later on this evening. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Be sure to smash a like on the like button too. Obviously, Sunday's game days, we'll have the match day experience, which is going to be a lot of fun. And just, fingers crossed. Fingers crossed, right? Fingers crossed. Let's just... you never know what to expect with Manchester United at the moment. So let's just hope. Let's just hope and pray, right? Hope and pray settings. Anyway, guys, look, I'm out of here. Hope you have a good Friday, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.